Cool.
Problem is, I've just never been put in a situation where I can be right in front of that stupid asshole Monsod. So that's the problem.
Sige. I'll send you the link now.
Okay, I can see. There's the link showing up here. Yeah.
Wait, hang on.
Cool. See, para di ko sa kon ba? Problem is,
Yeah,
I've just never been
payday
put in
weekend.
a situation.
Okay, sending you the link now. Right here. It's private chat.
Okay.
I was in the middle of traffic kanina when we were
Mo ba?
having this conversation.
Okay. So, naka sa traffic.
Traffic
Okay.
sa Guadalupe on my way
Okay.
to Mega Mall. I guess
Kanya
the
nakauli na ka.
traffic is a lot less and can be attributed to probably two factors. The pandemic, of course, because
Yeah.
not all people are going out and you have the kids at home, no
Yeah.
school. Second is the Skyway Stage 3. After it was completed, a lot of there are a lot of cars taking it, going to Quezon City from the south
Mm-hmm.
or Makati, then actually passing EDSA. So there's that.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we need your help. We need you guys. We need you watchers of this show to please keep on sharing and sharing and sharing and sharing and
Yeah.
spreading and spamming the link so that more people can watch it. So we need 100 at least, 100 people at least, and yeah. So it's 10:03 p.m.
Yeah, you want to give away a pair of slippers? Were you able to watch that episode where we had Jason Luengo, the owner of Tribu Sandals, Tribu
No,
Outdoors?
unfortunately, no, I wasn't able to watch that. No.
So he's willing to give away some stuff on Istoryang Futbolero. I haven't gotten around doing it yet because you have to write down names and stuff and set it up. But he's willing to do that for the program.
Okay.
Okay, very generous guy.
That's good. That's good. All right.
Okay, sige. I guess we're ready. We're
Yeah,
good to go.
go. Start it, man.
Yeah. Hang on. One last thing before we do this.
Okay.
Hang on. Wait. I think, yeah. All right, let's do that again. All right, guys, welcome to Istoryang Futbolero. My name is Ron Poblete. Special guest for tonight, our usual talk every Fridays is about the Constitution, constitutional reform. And with me is Mr. Orion Perez Dumdum of Correct Movement. Biyernes na biyernes at payday weekend pa talaga. Kaya medyo traffic dito sa Metro Manila. Hindi ko lang alam dito sa Singapore, Orion, if there's such a phenomenon when it's payday, people are out and about. But
people are out. Yes, people will be out. Usually, it's end of the month. It's so here in Singapore, it's not so much the quincena style, 15 and 30, but it's more like everything goes on the 30th. So usually, it's once a month. There are a few companies that do twice a month, but like my company does it once a month, and all the other companies I've actually joined do it once a month. So yeah, it's
probably because you earn more in Singapore than you do here in the Philippines. So there has to be compensation at least twice a month so that people will be able to pay for their bills. Right?
I think so. I think that might be it. Yeah.
Or baka mga Singaporean more conscientious sa kanilang sweldo, hindi sila or thrifty.
I
Hindi
don't
sila
know. Yeah, I don't know why, but that's just the way they do it here. I mean, it depends on the company, but most companies I've seen, they just give it once a month, the whole thing. So yeah,
wow. One time one time
one
big
time
time
big time, one time
sa
big
Singapore.
time. Yeah.
I would like to welcome our first few viewers saying hello to us this evening on Istoryang Futbolero. Pau Ortega, Melody Mugerza, Michael Lubat, you have Jerry O, Chini Huang, Javan Oramaliv, Murphy Piapi, Ronan Diet, of course, and Perez Puri. Thank you so much for hanging out on Istoryang Futbolero. I think it's going to be very interesting tonight if I'm going to base the intensity from my conversation with Orion earlier in the middle of his voice was reverberating uh, inside the car
Yeah,
while I
yeah.
was driving in EDSA, and you can sense that
I'm really
um,
passionate about the topic.
yes, exactly. And so thank you so much for watching tonight, wherever you are in the world. We have a lot of OFWs watching. We do appreciate what you do for the country. And thank you for watching Istoryang Futbolero. So our topic, ang papag-usapan natin ngayong gabi sa Istoryang Futbolero ay as usual on a Friday, it's Consti Friday. Hindi Consti pero Constitution Friday.
Well, you could actually save constipation because the
Oh yeah.
1987 it's not a 1987 constitution, it's a 1987 constipation, man.
Yun,
That's what we ended up getting. I mean, like if you listen to my friend Tony Abad, who was one of the resource persons at the House hearing, and the House hearing had a lot better quality of speakers than that shit show in the Senate.
Mm.
In the House, they had a lot of really, really intelligent people who know a lot about economics. And by the way, Attorney Tony Abad is actually an economist with a law degree. That's really what he is, basically.
Mm.
So he specializes in business consulting law. So it's the law that he talks about is very, very much economic related. So he really knows his stuff in that. He knows a lot about trade and anything to do with commerce and all that stuff. So he was like in Ateneo he was an economics honors graduate. So not just an ordinary economics bachelor's major, but with an honors on it. So he's a really smart guy. He knows his stuff. He's not just a normal lawyer, the run-of-the-mill Pinoy lawyer that you normally have there. Just tries to make white look black and black look white. But this guy knows his stuff, and he goes for the truth, and he refuses clients who are totally in the wrong. That's the way he is. So
That's I think that's a very good combination if you are both an economist and you are well versed with the law, because those are the two things that are being discussed and being debated upon in the last 2 weeks. Meron tayong session sa Congress, meron tayong session sa Senate, and I can't, I still can't believe I was able to stay and actually not get affected by watching or looking at Kiko Pangalinan's mug, because he's
oh my
presiding
god,
presiding over that Senate hearing, and it happened last Wednesday. Ryan, were you
Yeah.
able to watch it?
I was
Uh,
able to watch some of it. Yeah, I was able to watch some of it. Anyway, I was just gonna continue on with about my friend, right? So Tony Abad, he basically said that it was a very badly written constitution. I mean, he really said the words out loud that it was a badly written, it was a lousy constitution. It was wrongly written. It didn't follow the standards of what a constitution should be. A
mhm.
constitution is supposed to be a law about laws, a meta law. It's
Mm.
supposed to be telling people about what kinds of laws are allowed and what's not allowed, and that's it. But not telling people how much ownership is supposed to be restricted or not. That's not supposed to be in a constitution. That's supposed to be in legislation or in policy. And
Okay.
he was totally right about that. I mean, he went to Harvard, by the way, for a master's degree. So he knows his stuff. He has exposure, international exposure, that a lot of Pinoy lawyers who are stuck in the Philippines do not have. So he
What I
has that. He has that mindset.
Well, what I found very interesting in the discussions about constitutional reform, it would appear that Senator Kiko Pangilinan, um, his intention is to make sure that it would appear that he is trying to be fair as a moderator for the dialogue that's been going on in the Senate hearing on constitutional reform. He even had it organized where you have a proponent for core or constitutional reform speaks or presents, and then you have another guy, the alternate. He arranged it in a way where it's not skewed to one point of view. So I don't know if he did that on purpose, or he has really the good intention of making sure that it's a balance.
I actually saw something totally different. I beg to disagree on that. I saw something totally different. What I saw was he
Mm.
was very obvious in trying to prevent uh, positive stuff from coming out. So he would bring in people who would say they don't want it. So like the Monsods and other people who really don't want it. Like they come up with all kinds of crap and bullshit and fake news, right? And then they have other people who say we agree with these reforms, but now is not the time. So if you really take a look at what he did there, is that the vast majority, I think it's something like 90% of the people were saying no, we don't want it. And there were some people in that 90% who said no, we don't want it now. They said, but we're not opposed to the concept. We just don't want it now because it's in the tail end of his, patapos to kasi yung term like all that stuff. So,
Although
wala.
I need to point out though that he actually divided. No, he scheduled it in a way where it starts with the procedural part of changing the constitution. So you have one session that's dedicated to that. That's what happened last Wednesday, and I think the next session, the next hearing, will be about the substance of the proposals.
Yeah,
By
well, the first part did have mostly, it had a lot of stuff about the substance also. So most of them were basically saying that they don't agree
Yeah,
with the
he
need
couldn't help
to.
but take pot shots at the well, even the president. If you were watching,
Yeah.
uh, one of the main adversaries for constitutional reform, one of the main dissenting opinion on this is Christian Monsod, who's one of the framers of the 1987
Oh
Constitution.
God, that
He
guy
has
is
a
Mr. Fake
long,
News. That guy is a liar. That guy is a major. Oh my God, that guy's a major hack. He's a liar, and I want to face him. And I'm really going to, if we have the chance to go face to face, I'm going to tear him to shreds. And I can do that, even though I'm not a lawyer and he is. I can do that because he doesn't have the facts on his side. And the fact is, that guy is a liar. He is a liar.
It's crazy though, because I've heard, I've worked with a lot of experts and a lot of people from the academe talking about the numbers, talking about the data that supports a change for at least removing the restrictions on economic restrictions, removing the provisions on that, and they actually like point out certain studies by the World Bank, the what's the EOCD? EOCD. Yeah, the reports that came out talking about FDIs and how it's very important that a certain country meet all these criteria for us to be able to bring in the investment. But they also use data coming from the same, it would appear the same sources like the World Bank, and they would quote the World Bank and say that look, and they would actually look at it in a very different way, because apparently there are two ways of looking at data: causality and correlation. And some of the so-called experts coming from the opposition are saying that no, there's no causality in
So
terms
yeah,
of.
I'm gonna show you what they do. So it's like this. So the data is very clear. The data is absolutely clear that those countries that are much more open to foreign direct investors actually happen to do a lot better. So that's very, very clear. What they try to do, what these fucking idiots try to do, is to obfuscate the data that is so obvious. They try to, when I say obfuscate, they try to make people not understand, or they try to muddle up something that is already so
Mhm.
clear. And
Mhm.
that's what a lot of Filipino lawyers do, which is to make white look black and black look white. And that's what they're trying to do. They're now going to say basically, oh yeah, sure, that's what it looks like, but there are many other factors involved which show that it's not really that's the reason. That's what they're going to say. But when we really look at the data, we're going to see a statistical, basically not just a statistical correlation, but we're going to be able to test causality, the direction of causality, so that we find, well, actually, yes, indeed, when you do open up your economy to more foreign direct investors, when more foreign direct investors come in, more jobs do get created. And when more jobs get created, more people are able to improve their livelihoods. They're able to have better lives, better quality lives. They're able to improve their standard of living. That becomes very clear. But
Mm.
they will try to obfuscate things. In the social sciences, where people who are opposed to something are a little bit more able to do that, because unlike in the physical sciences, in the natural sciences like in chemistry and in physics, for example, all right, chemistry and physics and other hard sciences, it's very easy to draw a straight line saying, oh yes, this is indeed
Mm.
the situation, right? If you do
Cause
this,
effect.
this will
Mm.
always happen. If you
Mm.
do this, it'll always happen. In the social sciences, and even in biology, okay, biology and the social sciences, um, it's a little different. In biology and the social sciences, what happens is when you do this, when you do A, then B becomes, there's a higher chance that B will happen. So it's a different situation. It's not the same as if you do this, this will always happen. That's not how it works in biology or in the social sciences. I mean, look, it's the same thing with medicine. Medicine and biology, people, it's higher incidence of smoking is known to be related, very much correlated with lung cancer, right? But not everybody who smokes gets lung cancer, right? And not everybody who jogs and exercises is always healthy. However, what is true is that if you smoke, you have higher chances of getting lung cancer. If you exercise regularly and eat well and sleep well, then you have higher chances of having better health. So the situation in biology and medicine and the social sciences is what you know, this idea called um, probabilistic causality. Okay, it's a different concept from deterministic causality. And these idiots, I'll use that word. I was going to use an F word, but no. These idiots like Monsod and all these other liars, they like to fool a lot of uneducated and unsophisticated Pinoys who have not done this kind of research or who don't know these concepts about the difference between probabilistic causation and deterministic causation. They will say no, but just because there's this correlation doesn't mean that there is causation. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Because if you reverse the situation, you'll find, oh, yeah, but just because you did this, it doesn't mean that this happened. If you reverse it, on the other hand, if you do this, yes, it does clearly show that when you do this, there is a higher chance that this will happen. So, this is the difference between
No,
Um,
I get.
this is the difference between biology and biology, medicine, and the social sciences versus physics and chemistry. Now, I'll tell
In,
you why. I'll explain why. Because in physics and chemistry, it's purely physical, atomic, subatomic particles, chemicals reacting with each other. That's what it is. But in biology, you are talking about separate organisms, many separate organisms that happen to be in groups that sort of react similarly, but not always the same to the same stimulus. And that's the same thing with big systems in big groups, society. That's why the social sciences is a lot more complex because you're talking about huge numbers of individual human beings, where some human beings even have a veto power over what the normal how do you say this, stimulus and response is. Most people, there's food, right, they're going to go for the food, but there are some people who are going to say, I don't need that now, or I'm fasting right now, so I don't need to. So you can understand now what I'm saying, right? There are people who will be exceptions to the rule, but the general tendency is clear. If you do this, there's a higher chance that this other thing will happen. So
let
yeah,
me,
I've explained that part now.
yeah, Ryan. Let me just explain to our viewers, know what exactly we're talking about, because we're trying to destroy the argument coming from the opposition. Obviously, when we do constitutional reform on Istoryang Futbolero, it's really about making sure that people understand why we're doing this. At the same time, we're at where we've reached that part, that very important stage in the campaign where there is already a dialogue going on in the Senate and in Congress, two very important venues for such discussions, and we need to defeat their arguments, and also the reasoning behind their being their the reason behind their dissenting opinion. And Orion is explaining um, very I don't know, very comprehensively as to why there are flaws in their argument when they talk about causality, when they talk about proof. Because first of all, um, there's probably a reason, Orion, kung bakit hindi nila pwedeng i-relate ito directly, yung FDI, walang studies na lumalabas na talagang specifically telling people na, oh, pag merong foreign investment na pumapasok sa isang bansa, ay talagang yumayaman yung bansa. Meron bang study talaga na
Meron
nakikita mo
marami. There are a
yumaman?
lot. There are a lot of studies, and these guys are just so freaking ignorant, and they just want to basically confuse the Filipino public because they know that there are not that many intellectuals, not that many people who are well versed in this topic. They know that OFWs like me are few, but I exist, and I'm
Yeah.
here to stop these people from spreading their lies.
Yung si
So
ano, unahin natin si Orion, si Christian Monsod, kasi siya yung pinaka-prominent dyan sa mga, ano na yan yung mga ating, not say kalaban, but the opposite side of the argument is comes from them, because they're the former, they're one he's one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution. Obviously, he would try to protect the
but
1987
so is
Constitution.
so is Dr. Bernie Villegas, who was also in the CONCOM of 1986, who set
But
up the 1987 Constitution. But Bernie Villegas says it was hurriedly written, and it needs to be changed. And it's
mm,
long been known that foreign direct investors are good. And at that point in time, when he was part of the CONCOM, he opposed it, but he was overruled because there was only like just him and probably a few others, and so many idiots, too many idiots in that concom who are based on this old school bariotic Pinoy way of thinking, who think that foreign investors are bad. That's the problem. There is
uh,
this prevailing narrative that has been taught to so many Filipinos to think that Filipinos are incapable of learning things, incapable of competing. Well, fuck this shit. I'm a Filipino, and I won the 2014 Magners and Singapore International Comedy Contest. I won that beating Australians, beating British, beating Singaporeans, beating Irish, beating Indians, beating people from all these other countries, and I'm a freaking Pinoy. So what the frick is this? Where these other Pinoys think that hindi naman tayo makakapag-compete. Putang ina, nakakompete ako, panalo nga ako dun eh. I mean, how the frick do these people think that we cannot compete? Of course we can. We can. Maraming magagaling na Pilipino. Manny Pacquiao beat us. He did out of so many other people from different nationalities. My point is, there's no reason to think that we cannot do it. We can. We can learn, especially we can learn. You bring in the foreign companies, Filipinos will be hired en masse working for these companies, and some of us will move up the ranks and become really great at what we do. That's just the way it works. We've got Dado Banato, we've got people like that. The problem is there are not that many companies like that in the Philippines. That's why there are just not that many of us who are like so-called excelling in really high-tech fields. But bring the companies in, bring the foreign companies in. Many of us will learn. By the way, there's a problem with your audio.
What's wrong with my audio?
There's an echo that's coming out. I can hear it here. Yeah.
Are we good?
So yeah, we're good. Yeah, that's good. So I don't hear the echo anymore. But yeah, I was gonna say, so I really got really passionate about that. But
Yeah,
I'm saying,
let's go back to Christian Monsod, because
Yeah.
the reason why I brought him up is because he had the longest presentation during the Senate hearing. He went way past the 8 minutes allotted for the speakers, for the resource people who were invited, and I kind of expected that he's gonna be in there for a long time, because obviously he's one of the main characters that are against changing the constitution. But one thing I noticed about that, Orion, about how he presented it, he interjects like stuff, or I don't know where he gets his data, no. Pero isa sa mga sinabi niya na very telling. I think he's trying to make sure, apart from giving reasons as to why we shouldn't change the constitution, meron pa siyang mga hirit na against the administration, pot shots at the administration, where he would say na we are the lowest performing economy before the pandemic. May mga ganun siyang sinasabi. Tapos sabi ko, talaga?
no, actually, no, it's actually true that we have been, we continue to be one of the worst performing. We still are. We still are actually among the worst performing.
Taka muna, that's kind of like
we are still compared to
contradicting in terms of growth, kasi parang 6.5% yung ating diba, expected.
Don't be fooled by, okay, I'm gonna make this very, very clear. Now, as someone who comes from a technical course, we're taught to understand this. So growth rate is not a good indicator of success. Okay, growth rate is not a good indicator of success. Why? Because I'll tell you what is the mathematical formula for growth rate. It is new minus old over old. Okay? New number versus old number.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then divided by the whole figure divided by old. All right? So, I'll tell you what. Let's say somebody scores 1 out of 10 in his exam. So there's a small test, quiz. He scores 1 out of 10 in his exam. So he failed, right? Like just 1 point out of 0, almost 0. 1 out of 10. In the next exam, he gets 2 out of 10, right? Now look at somebody who got 9 out of 10, and in the next exam, he got 10 out of 10. Perfect score. Do you know who among the two has a high growth rate?
Well,
Do you know who? The person with the high growth rate is the guy who came from 1 out of 10 and then got 2 out of 10, because he would have had 100% increase. Okay? Because he had 1 and then his score became 2. That's 100% increase. Whereas the other guy, he would have only had 1% increase, or 1 out of 9. So the 1 divided by 9,
No,
what's that?
yeah, I get that.
That's a low. That's going to be considered a low growth rate. So growth rate is not a good way of measuring success. You
I
have
get,
to look. You have to look at the absolute values, and the absolute values of the Philippines are low compared to the rest of ASEAN. Now,
okay.
the Philippine government under Duterte has in fact been able to do well in terms of bringing in more investors compared to the past.
Yes,
But
I think
compared
FBI
to other countries, no. Compared to
FDI's.
other countries, no.
Correct me if I'm wrong. FDI's during this administration are at the a record high, right, compared to
Yes,
the other administration since Ramos or Cory.
yes,
Uh,
yes. They're quite high.
they're quite high,
They're
and
quite high.
we do have like really good credit standing as well. Like I think we're
Yes, we do
triple
have
B.
good. Yes, so we have that. That's good. That's good, right? And a lot of that comes from GMA's time policies that she set up, and then also the fact that she's been actually helping
Mm.
as a kind of consultant also to this administration. Now, the problem is when we compare how much FDI does the Philippines get compared to the rest of ASEAN, that's where we have a problem. Because when we compare ourselves, for example, to Singapore, we are really, really low. When we compare ourselves to Malaysia, to Indonesia, to Thailand, and Vietnam, we're actually quite low. So, unfortunately, we're not really doing very well there. And that's the problem. But that's the other problem because the Noy administration was the one that kept on basically, how do you say this, building up this idea that, oh, we have a really high growth rate. But as I explained very clearly, growth rate is not the best indicator. It's not a good indicator of success. That's the
Why
fact.
is it then being used by economists most of the time when describing a particular country? Like China has always been, when you read about China and its growth, it's all about the growth rate that they mention most of the time. Like
Yeah.
China's growth rate this year for the past 10 years, it's always that metric that they mention, or they.
So so growth rate at least makes you understand relative to yourself, right? Relative to yourself. But the moment you use growth rate to compare yourself with others, that's wrong. That's
Mm.
not a good way of doing it. So growth rate, so basically when you just talk about growth rate, you talk about it in comparison with yourself, just so that you know, okay, that we've already been able to sort of double ourselves, or that's it. That's it. But do not ever use growth rate as a comparison with other countries. Because when you do that, and then you actually find that, oh, wait a minute, we're like still among the lowest in terms of GDP per capita. We're still one of the lowest in terms of actual FDI inflows in real absolute numbers. It's really pathetic. We're going to look like fools. And
Yeah. So
that's usually what has happened in the
okay.
past.
So going back to Monsod's argument, Orion, he also mentioned contraction of the economy. I think we are expected to be the lowest performing by the end of the year at around -7%, if I'm not mistaken. He mentions that in his argument. He also says that we are the lowest performing, one of the lowest performing countries in dealing with COVID-19. So I think I know where he's coming from.
Yeah,
In
so he's trying to hit the administration. But the
Mm,
problem is the administration actually, a lot of our economic managers, you listen to Dominguez, you listen to Pernia, they use the same figures and they're going to say basically, this is why we need to open up the economy. This is
mm.
why we need more foreign direct investors. This is why we need them to come in and create more jobs, because we need them, because we cannot rely on the local investors because we don't have that many local investors. That's the biggest problem. We don't we're not like Japan and South Korea long ago, when they didn't rely, so to speak, on so many foreign investors during that time. Luckily for those countries, they are cold countries where people have a very, 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 very high savings rate. Because in countries that are cold, if you do not save, you die. That's the way it works. If you
Mhm.
are in a tropical country, even if you don't save, you can still just get fruits here, get some halaman here, and vegetable there, and get some rats or cats or whatever animal just around there. They're unlike in cold countries. Where are you going to find the animals? They're all hibernating somewhere. You can't find them, and it's too cold to go hunting. In a hot country, people are a bit more complacent and less likely to save. So, in countries that are tropical, I'm sorry, but you need to rely on foreign direct investors. And that is the only reason why Singapore has become the richest country in the world that is a tropical country, because they used foreign direct investors. If
Um,
Singapore tried to do the Japan and South Korea route, they would not have been able to succeed. And that's what Lee Kuan Yew himself said.
Brenton Bernal says, for me, GDP per capita, ang measurement if your economy is doing great. China is the second biggest economy in the world. They have $11 trillion pero maliit lang GDP per capita nila. Kaya di feel ng tao ang pagiging mayaman nito. All right.
Nila, nila. Yes, and maybe I can explain there, no? So yeah,
Hmm.
what Brenton said really makes a lot of sense, because that's true. Now the thing about China is, because there are, of course, areas which are more developed than others. So you have the coastal provinces, the coastal regions, and the more highly urbanized areas like Shenzhen and Shanghai and Beijing and Tianjin and all these other places. They obviously have almost a first world set of living standards, whereas those in the interior, they have very, very third world standards too. So that's the problem. So you do have that disparity between the coastal areas of China versus the interior. The good thing about China, and I've lived in China there, is that the people are humble about this. So even though there's a lot of development in China, they will always say, no, but we are not rich yet. We are still a poor country. Yeah, the places there in the coastal regions may be rich, but we still have a lot of poor people in the interior. So we're still not done yet. So they're very, very humble about that. They always admit that they're not there yet. They're not rich yet. They still have a lot of people that they need to help in raising standards. Unlike many of us Pinoys, mayaman na tayo, okay na. Dami pa ring OFW. Daming napapwersa, dami kumakain ng pagpag. I mean, sayang eh. So the problem with Monsod is he's a liar. He's always going to try to twist facts. And that's what he used his law degree for. His law degree was just there to basically teach him how to be a freaking liar. And you, Mr. Monsod, if you're watching this, I want to face you. I want to be in a freaking debate with you, and I'm going to tear you to shreds because you don't know shit about what you're talking about. You, Mr. Monsod, have always sought to destroy the Philippines. That's the truth.
One of the resource people there was also a Dean Mendoza, who was the professor of Senator Kiko Pangilinan in college. He was also a former justice, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yes, yes.
the way he did it was he said that it's we should look at we shouldn't the focus should be on making sure that we get the right people in government. So if there are any changes or any reforms that should be made, is we should make changes in how we vote for our officials
Or
or
and did he say anything about getting a parliamentary system? Because that's the problem. A lot of these people talk about getting the right people, but they don't talk about getting the right system in place. And I think, well, this is the thing. He's a law professor. He's not a political scientist. A lot of them don't know anything about systems of government unless they've done their own research.
Hmm.
So this guy, I don't think he even knows about the need for a parliamentary system. That if you have a parliamentary system, you'll have a self-sorting mechanism that forces the best people to go on top and forces the least the worst performers to be kicked out. So I don't think they even know this because they're not systems thinkers. You're gonna get better. You're gonna get better discussions about this topic from people from an architectural, civil engineering, an engineering, IT, science background. Even musicians will be better at this topic than lawyers. I'm sorry to say, but that's just the fact.
The first, was it the first ever hearing in Congress when where Deputy Speaker Marcoleta actually spoke about constitutional reform, and he said
Oh yeah,
something.
he was very, very disappointing there. I mean, a lot of people like him because of his stance on ABS-CBN, but then when he started talking about, oh, but is there a study thing? Come on, freaker, dude. The joint chambers of commerce, the joint foreign chambers of commerce were already there, and they were actually talking on behalf of the foreign companies that they represent, who have given them all the feedback in the world about why we need to get rid of those anti-foreign direct investment restrictions. I mean, like, well, is there a study saying that I've not seen a study yet? Oh, come on, man. And that's just another typical Pinoy lawyer. Again, I'm not here to destroy lawyers generally, but I'm just saying the quality of Pinoy lawyers is dismal. A lot of people who are Pinoy lawyers just don't know shit about economics, don't know shit about how to run a society. I mean, there are exceptions like Digong and a few other people, like my friend Tony Abad and Dean. I have another good friend, Dindo.
Mhm.
I mean, he's really good at this stuff. But most others, they don't know anything about systems thinking. They don't know anything about algorithms. They don't know anything about selection and sorting mechanisms. I'm sorry, it's just lawyers are not the right types of people to design systems or even talk about economies and economics.
Uh, you know what? Let me try to look for that for the present for the. Okay, here we go. Let me see. Um, I'm looking for Monsod's presentation, so
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear.
There's someone here, Sally Costales was saying, have some respect. We love Congressman Marcoleta. Well, I mean, look, he did a good job with the whole ABS-CBN part, okay? But I'm sorry, Sally Costales. He didn't say a good thing. He wasn't speaking based on a topic he knows anything about once he started talking about the foreign direct investment restrictions. I'm sorry, but those are the facts, solid facts. He doesn't know anything about the whole foreign direct investment thing. So, sorry, that's not his topic. He should have just shut up.
Okay, I found the guy. Here's Monsod.
It is the
Okay.
aim to drive the meals and not the other way around. And it's not enough to be sincere. We must also be correct in what we do. I submit that we are failing in this regard, not because of the Constitution, but because we have not fully implemented it, especially its provisions on social justice and local economy.
Oh, see, that's one of their main arguments, that it's not really the constitutions that's the problem; it's the people who are running the show. Because we,
Bullshit. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Of course,
okay,
it's the system. Of course, it's the Constitution, because the Constitution is what sets up the system that selects the kinds of people that you get. If you have a system where the system is based on who's personally popular, who's a public figure, who's a celebrity, and gives those people a distinct advantage in winning, then you're not really going to have the best people. But if you have, for example, a parliamentary system where the politicians have to duke it out to get on the top, meritocratically, and the way they are voted is based on the party and not who they are, you're going to have a different system. You're going to have a system where the best goes on top and the worst gets thrown out. That's a system that you need.
let's try to break down all the things that Monsod said in his presentation. Are you okay with this, Orion?
Yeah,
So that-
sure. Let's go.
Let's see what he has to say, because it's still fresh to my memory. But
Okay, there's an idiot here who's saying, ulol ka, Orion, yung Hoy, putang ina mo, sino ka? Putragis kang gago ka na nag-ano sa akin, ha? Putang ina mo, kung sino kang nagsasabi ng, ulol ka, Orion, nung makasalita ka, putang ina mo. Tarantado ka, papatayin ka ng gago ka, putang ina mo. Ha? Kala mo kung sino ka? Putang ina.
okay, all
Gago
right.
ka, putang ina mo. Putragis ka.
Sige, let's continue.
The means must include the two compelling principles of the Constitution, namely, never again to any authoritarianism, and the economy must safely and firmly be in the hands of Filipinos themselves.
Mhm.
If the life of the law is experienced, then we have the experience of martial law and amendments to the 1935 Constitution on parental rights for Americans as examples, both of which resulted in economic disasters. There have been 5 previous attempts to change the Constitution. The Ramos Pirma, the Project Accord of Mr. the President Estrada. In 2001, the attempt to have a French version presidential parliamentary. In 2006, Sigaw ng Bayan of the Arroyo administration struck down by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional. In 2009, a proposal by the Arroyo to give an equal vote for congressmen and senators, which we are discussing now. In 2015, the House initiated JR1 with almost exactly the same provisions on the economy as RBH2. All of these past attempts were unsuccessful because the people perceived the articulated purposes as a smokescreen for self-serving ends.
Okay, there you go. That,
Yeah, but that's what they always say. So they're
the
always
people.
going to say it's the same stupid, idiotic.
No,
Uh,
it's very, very very interesting that he uses the term the people. Who are the people that he's talking about? The people. Sorry, he's talking about the general public. Are saying that this is just a smokescreen. Who? Which people are we talking about here? You think, Orion? Sinong the
the
people?
oligarchs. He's just talking about his. Basically, we all know, and you can't sue me for this, you freaking son of a bitch, Mr. Monsod. You'll never be able to sue me for this because this is true. Everybody knows that you are the factotum. You are the lackey of the Lopezes. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that you lick their fucking ass. Everybody knows that, Mr. Monsod, that you are their hatchet man. Everybody knows that you are basically the person who does everything for them. Everybody knows that. So when you say you don't want anything changed in the 1987 Constitution, we know that you're talking on behalf of the oligarchs. So always you're going to say, Mr. Monsod, that it's about term extension, it's about self-preservation. Fuck you.
The articulated purpose of RBH2 is similar to previous attempts. Quote, provide decent living conditions to the people, transform this economic growth into inclusive and solidarity progress among Filipinos. In other words, development defined as high growth rate plus equitable distribution of its benefits. But unlike previous attempts, the context of RBH2 is different with the pandemic and a shattered economy. But RBH2 changes that by using outdated data. In the preliminary note, the growth RBH refers to is 2010-2017 before the pandemic, although already declining even before the pandemic.
Mhm.
Citing only the good news and suppressing the bad is a recurring theme of this administration.
Mhm.
The fact is, for 2020, when all countries were experiencing a slowdown, Philippine economy was one of the worst performing, if not the worst, in Southeast Asia. And the Philippines is also the worst performing among East Asian neighbors in the handling of the pandemic. The evidence on growth. The projected growth rate for 2020 by the IMF of East Asia are Myanmar 2%, China 1.9, Vietnam 1.6, Laos 2.21, Indonesia minus 1.5, Mongolia minus 2, Cambodia minus 2.8, Malaysia minus 6, Thailand minus 7.3, Philippines minus 8.3. As to the pace of recovery, both the IMF and World Bank projections is that it will also be the laggards. The evidence on the pandemic, the Lancet Commission report to the UN General Assembly ranks countries according to the handling of the pandemic. Out of 91 countries, the Philippines came out 66 on the number of new cases per day per million population. Most of our neighbors are in the top 10 with Indonesia ranked 28. We are the worst in Asia.
Are you aware of this? The numbers that he's spewing out.
Yes, I am.
Right?
I am. And I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I don't
Right.
disagree. But the thing
It's
is,
66.
But the
The
thing is,
reason
I don't disagree with those numbers. It's true that we are among the worst. Yes. But that's all the more reason why we need to get rid of those idiotic, stupid 60-40 and 70-30 and other anti-foreign direct investment restrictions. That's the reason why we need to remove them. Kaya nga tatanggalin yan eh. Because if we don't remove them...
All right. Let's continue.
What's the problem there? Okay, go ahead.
Fiscal stimulus. In other words, wrong analysis, incompetent implementation. Is there a relationship between lives and livelihood? According to a UP study recently that correlates the fall in GDP growth in 2020 from 2019 across 21 countries in Asia and East Asia, including Australia and New Zealand, quote, stronger national capacities to detect and respond to emerging outbreaks are associated with better economic outcomes in 2020, and moreover, that improvements in certain capacities, such even as laboratory systems, may matter more. RBH2 articulates the real motive for RBH2, just like previous attempts, is power and money. RBH2 is also supported by the business community. The motive of the businessman is not the country either. That's just the rhetoric. The real motive is profit. RBH2 is dangerous and devious because it's a wholesale transfer of power from the Constitution to the Congress on determining the limitations of foreign ownership of land.
Okay, stop. I'm going to talk about this part. That's the whole point, you stupid idiot, Mr. fucking Musod. Oh my God. Monsod is such an idiot because that's the whole point. When you're going to talk about so-called transferring the power from the Constitution to the Congress, that's the whole point. All countries do that. All countries do not put their anti-whatever restrictions inside their constitution. If ever they have restrictions, they do it by law or by policy. And doing it by law means your legislature does it. Now, the legislature is made up of people who were elected by the people. Now, this idiot, this stupid fucking idiot named Monsod, fuck you, Monsod, putang ina mo. He doesn't understand the concept of representative democracy. Representative democracy means that we have people that act as our delegates, that we basically vote certain people from our districts. We vote for people who will act as our representatives. We vote for people who will receive inputs and feedback from us. That's the whole point of why there's a website of the House of Representatives and even the Senate, so that we can actually contact these supposedly representatives of the people and tell them what to do. We can tell them how we feel. We can tell them what we need. We can basically say to our respective congressmen, we need this. We need a law on this. Please act on it. That's the whole point. We can send them letters, snail mail if you want, on paper, send them email, comment on their Facebook accounts, or visit them in person. That's the whole point. We are supposed to do that. All countries have that. All countries that are representative democracies have that. And that's the whole point. You have these people who are your delegates, who are your representatives, who do things for you, because we can't all do it ourselves. We have to tell people who represent our districts or our constituencies to do it for us. And then they do it. So they do it in plenary sessions and in committee meetings. They do it there. And that's why we give them the power to do that. But he's an idiot for saying, oh, it's a wholesale transfer from the Constitution to the Congress. That's the whole point. You know
what's funny? I can't say that the Constitution is the sole reason why we have such politicians running the show in Congress. But we can also say that to refute what Monsod is saying, or to make it look silly, is the fact that because of the 1987 Constitution, for the last 30 years, that Constitution produced the quality of politicians that we have right now in government. And for him to say that you don't trust them, we can't give them the power, when the reason why they're there and the reason why we have such politicians is because of the Constitution that they
exactly. Perfectly said, my friend. Perfectly said. So this stupid idiot Monsod is actually contradicting himself.
Hmm.
He's contradicting himself, basically saying you cannot trust Congress to do it. Why are you giving it to Congress? Well, that's the whole point, right? You design this particular system. You are one of the framers of the system where we have a Congress, and now
Hmm.
you're saying don't trust Congress. Can you trust Congress? Stupid. Kayo nga ang nag-invento ng sistemang yan, tapos sasabihin mo, hindi mo sila pwedeng i-trust. Tanga ka pala. Laggards.
Ito.
Media, advertising, educational institutions. Once the phrase is inserted, the constitutional provisions become meaningless, and the door is opened wider to corruption or transactional legislation.
Stupid.
At which corrupt politicians and greedy
Talagang
elites are
Monsod na
very
yan.
adept at doing.
It's a scare tactic
Remember
na to.
Hacienda
Their
Luisita,
tactic,
the law that allowed landowners to distribute shares rather than land. Remember how the banking system, unlike in successful Asian countries, which forced it to serve development goals, was allowed alternate compliance with the mandate to devote 25% of their portfolio to agriculture, where we were allowed to buy T-bills instead. Remember the underfunding of asset reform programs, or TRAIN, that reduced taxes to the rich, where the bill intended to correct the pro-mining law in 2015 that quietly died in a committee in the House. Above all, RBH2 is a new and bigger source of illicit money than the pork barrel. Look at it this way. Once the insidious insertion is accomplished,
Ano yan?
our
Kabubuan yan.
legislators can go to rich foreign land developers or mining companies and ask, by how much do you wish to increase your ownership of land and mine? From
Mhm.
Okay, so
40%
let's stop here.
to
Let's stop here.
51%.
So scare tactics na naman eh, di ba? And,
Yeah.
and then does he have any proof that this is happening? Does he have any proof that this is what's going to happen? No, he doesn't. It's just all he's doing is just pure fantasy opinion. Pure fantasy opinion. The problem here is this Monsod is the most weaponized of all of the oligarch protectors because he has his wife, both of them come out on TV regularly, and they're very well connected because they are friends with the Lopezes. They have all the access that they need to be on TV and radio or whatever. They can basically on print, so they can basically spew out all their bullshit and their drivel and their lies, and there's just so few of people like us who are talking about the real truth that many Filipinos don't know about. So people like this idiot Monsod are allowed free reign, and they are always being made to look as if they're experts. You know, the Christian Monsod, constitutional expert. Like, what the fuck? That guy's not a constitutional expert. If he was a constitutional expert, he would have spoken like a true constitutional expert, like my friend Tony Abad, because Tony Abad said the truth about a real constitution. A constitution should be brief, concise, general, not specific. It should be a law for laws and not not a huge, gigantic piece of legislation that is hard to amend. That's my friend was basically saying those things should not be in there. All these little specifics should not be in the Constitution. You put that in legislation so that they can change when they need to be changed. And that's the
So
thing.
basically, the Constitution should be very general, so that
Very general, yes.
that's where they can derive laws that they can legislate in Congress, right?
Yes, yes.
So it's just a basic guide. This is as far as you can go, but if you're going to come up with laws, it should be within the parameters of the Constitution.
Yes, yes.
Okay, got it. Tapos, Junjun says, si Monsod ang Comelec chair nung nandaya si Ramos. He has trust issues as well. Okay. All right. Do we continue, Orion? Let's
Yeah,
continue.
go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
50 billion. 67% 100 billion. 75% 150 billion. 100% 200 billion. That's loose change. The biggest mining project in Tampakan, South Cotabato, cost $6 billion or 270 billion. The total mineral deposits in our country is estimated at 1 trillion or 45 trillion pesos. That's what's stake with RBH2. These are the numbers. Today, to change ownership percentage, the economic provision, the House must muster 217 votes and the Senate 18 votes. Once the insertion of this phrase is made, the constitutional provisions, the Congress only needs enough votes as in ordinary laws to change the percentage on ownership. In theory, 73 votes in the House, 7 votes in the Senate. RBH2 is also insidious because it is made to appear to be harmless and is being represented as only giving Congress flexibility to make actual changes at an appropriate time. But it sets a bad precedent in trivializing our Constitution and forecloses debate at this time because no specific changes are being proposed on the foreign equity caps. They say, don't worry, when the actual numbers are proposed, the people, through Congress, will still be the ones to decide. The only issue today on the table, they say, is a harmless insertion of one phrase. Given our experience with corrupt legislators and greedy elitists on transactional legislation, are we willing to entrust our legislators
Ayun.
with that kind of
Right.
power?
So
Especially
there he
since
goes
there's
again.
so much more money from rich foreign investors and the
Stupid idiot.
poor
So
don't have any money.
so that's
Why
the thing
foreign
again. So
direct
stop it. Stop it.
investment?
So that's again proof that this guy is contradicting himself. So he says that you cannot trust the legislators, but the legislators are produced by the system that he and his friends set up.
Mhm.
What an idiot. What a real idiot, right? What a real idiot. That's the truth about Monsod. Guys, make sure this reaches Monsod. Look, make sure that you just keep on sharing and sharing and spamming this and look for Monsod's Facebook account. Make sure that he reaches. I want him to watch this. I want him to see me thrash the shit out of that son of a bitch. I want that son of a bitch to know that people hate him and that I'm here to basically show him how wrong he is and how much of an idiot, stupid cretin he is.
It's crazy. The people are more concerned. Well, I think there's a reason why they're old. There's a reason why they're conservative because they're actually old. But it doesn't help that the people who are against changes are the ones who are about to kick the bucket in the next 10 or 20 years.
Indeed.
Right?
So they're basically trying to trap us into their stupidity even when they die. But look, we're going to be left holding the ball of, once they're gone, we're the ones going to suffer from the stupid decisions they made. It's time for us to fix it. Everybody knows that what they made was a monstrous piece of crap.
All right. Maybe last few sentences.
Advocates
Go ahead.
say
Yeah.
that restrictions on foreign ownership stifles the investment climate, resulting in lost employment and growth opportunities, and that such restrictions are therefore anti-poor. The latest move of Congress argues that foreign investment fosters competition and will therefore result in fair pricing of products or services. Of course, this does not apply to natural monopolies like transmission and distribution of electricity. Our present problems of inefficiency and overly high returns rise from regulatory capture or cartels, even where there are more than one participant. Will allowing the entry of foreign investors with majority or full control of a company address these problems or just raise the price of transactional legislation and regulation? The truth is closer to what Professor Emeritus Michael Mayer of Wharton School pointed out in Business World article in 2014, that the ethos of capitalism is you operate for your shareholders rather than for the whole people. Quality of investment. Another argument for opening our doors fully to FDI is that any investment is worth attracting because, quote, at least they contribute something and everything helps. But the empirical evidence is clear. FDI does have a role to play in development, but what counts is not the quantity but the quality of the investment. And to determine quality, we need to make a full accounting, not just of its benefits, but also of its costs, including what economists call externalities, and also take account of such long-term considerations as brownfield or greenfield investment, its contribution to raising the trajectory of our technological development, and downstream plans from our
Okay,
minerals.
let's stop this part. Let's stop this part. So this guy, this idiot, is basically trying to take so much time saying shit that doesn't really mean anything. The fact is, what we need are jobs. Our people need jobs. In fact, it's quality. For me, the quality of the investment is what will allow us to have more jobs. That's the truth. But he doesn't care about that. He doesn't care. He really, Monsod is an enemy of the Filipino people. He does not care about the welfare of ordinary Filipinos. He does not care about the biggest problem of ordinary Filipinos, which is joblessness and unemployment. I'm an OFW myself. When I was in Microsoft Philippines, I was earning this much, and then when I moved to Microsoft Singapore, doing the exact same thing, basically just changing where I was from Manila, from Makati, Enterprise City at that point in time, and then I moved to Enterprise Tower. Sorry, Enterprise Center. Yeah, what was the name of that? Those two twin towers there in Makati. But that's where Microsoft was at that time when I was still there. It was basically this is how much I was getting, and then when I moved to Singapore, doing the same thing, I got something like 3 to 4 times what I was earning, and I took home more because the tax rate in Singapore is so much lower than it is in the Philippines. So I was paying higher taxes in the Philippines for a lower wage, whereas in Singapore I got a higher wage and then paid lower taxes. So my point is, it was so clear to me that something is wrong. Something is so wrong. I was doing the same kind of work, but then I was getting so much more in Singapore for the same kind of job. So what's the reason? Singapore has much more foreign direct investors. And Singapore always tells the story everywhere they go. Every National Day, they always talk about how they went from rags to riches. They always emphasize, this is how we did it. We were open to learning. We were open to bringing in investors as long as our people would have jobs, so that people would not become criminals or go into prostitution and all that stuff. They said, let's just have enough companies and factories and offices to come in so that people have jobs. That's really what it is. But Monsod doesn't care about that. Monsod does not care about people's jobs. That's the thing.
You know what Monsod reminds me of? It's like you're having a discussion with a bunch of your friends, and there's one guy is always negative about things. Like if somebody comes up with an idea of something productive to do, there's this one guy who would say, alam mo, mahirap yun eh. Kasi ganito, alam mo, ganito talaga, si una-una tamad si tapos ito, mahal yan. Saan tayo kukuha ng It's always like, he wants to create a very negative environment for the discussion, so that most people who are listening to him will get tired of pursuing the idea. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he'll start by attacking the administration for being incompetent, and then so that you will lose confidence in the process, because this is like something that the administration is trying to do. And then he will add, like, he will try to bring up
emotional stuff, and basically he's trying to manipulate people's feelings. That's what he's trying to do.
And then the scare tactics, and then he will appeal to authority by saying that, the World Bank said, and this said, and then there's just so many things that you need to do for you to be able to open a restaurant. You know what I mean?
I'm going to say one thing. I don't want to start any blasphemous rumors, but I think Monsod's got a sixth sense of humor, and when I die, I expect to find him laughing.
Freestyle ka na, Ryan. Let's think.
Monsod's got a sixth sense of humor.
But this is good. This is good. At least it's becoming very, very clear. When you watch a Senate hearing or a congressional hearing, we have to admit, unless you are like a political junkie, it's boring. I mean, no one, if we're going to get like a 20-year-old to sit and listen to a Senate hearing, they'll probably tune out and play Candy Crush or a video game while watching that. Because it's something that is so, well, first of all, boring, because people talk very slow. You have like people from the academe who takes a long time to explain things, and then they will try to fit in like very complex ideas and make it even more complex by the way they explain it. So what happens there? The people who watch will tune out,
Yeah.
and they'll have a hard time supporting. You'll have a hard time supporting something you don't understand. And I
Yeah.
think
Well,
that's
here's the thing. Here's the thing. No, so there you would notice, for example, the difference in the quality of the hearings between the House and so there's this joke. There's this joke of some congressman that I know. It was Carlo Nograles who told me. I met him when I was
oh yeah, yeah,
I met
Carlo.
him when I was in Madrid. But he, of course, we also kind of saw each other in college as well. So he's I think 2 batches lower. So he made this joke. So we congressmen say we are the lower house and the Senate is the slower house. So yeah, the slower house, the lower house is the slower house. But it's true. The quality, generally speaking, yes, there are idiots like leftist, communist, party list guys. Yeah, in Congress, yes. But generally speaking, congressmen actually are of a higher quality than the senators. I mean, the senators, they drag things a lot. They say things that don't mean anything, just wasting time. Whereas the congressmen usually they tend to be much more vigorous and more lively. Basically they go straight to the point more, and that's the quality of the hearing at the lower house, the House, than in the Senate. So in the Senate, when you look at the number of viewers at any given point in time, it was only 100 plus or something. Whereas in the House, it was like, I don't know, 400 or something, 500 more. It was more people watching the hearings at the House than in the Senate. Why? Because the quality of the people was different. The people that they had in the House hearing,
Isn't it because people don't like to look at Kiko's mug?
Yeah, that's partly it too. Yes, it's partly it. People didn't like to look at him. He's so fugly, and at the same time, the quality, just really the quality of the resource speakers. So in the resource speakers at the House were much more straight to the point. They really made a lot of sense. Whereas the people in the Senate, they were just saying a lot of mumbo jumbo aimed at trying to make black look white and white look black. They were trying to basically force,
try to confuse people.
Trying to confuse people that we need to improve the economy, but foreign direct investors is not the way to do it. Something that's how they talk. That's what this idiot Monson is trying to say.
Another argument that they always use is that no, FDI is not it's not the solution. If you ask, studies show that there are 5 or 6 very important criteria for investment to come in, and changing the constitution is not one of them.
The idiots will say that, but then what they don't know is a lot of people have already said that yes, it is the constitution that turned us off. And that's what the joint chambers of commerce were saying. And I've met some of those people in the joint chambers of commerce because back in 2010, I was back in the Philippines then. And I was actually, at that point in time, I had just set up the Correct movement at that point in time. I was liaising with one of my co-founders, Mrs. Carmen Pedrosa. Mrs. Carmen Pedrosa is the mother of Veronica Pedrosa, and she's also been a very staunch supporter of constitutional reform for the longest time. So she's a journalist. Yeah, she writes articles in the Philstar, and she's very, very pro constitutional reform. Now, Mrs. Pedrosa, so she's one of the co-founders of the Correct movement. She basically introduced me to a lot of different people, and she introduced me to the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. So back then, CAS, or Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, had what's his name? Köppinger. I forgot his first name. But anyway, so Dr. Köppinger was the guy who was leading it. And he invited me to join in one of these seminars that they had. Yeah. And in this seminar that they had at the Sulu Hotel in Quezon City, it was all about the removal of foreign direct investment restrictions. And in that particular time, you had all these guys from the joint chambers of commerce there, and so John Forbes was there. There was the guy from from it was a German guy who was also there. I mean, there was all these people from different countries
Peter
who
Wallace.
were there. And who?
Peter Wallace was there.
I think Peter Wallace was probably. I think he was also there in that. But here's the thing. So I was right next to the guy I was next to at that point in time. He was with the European Chamber of Commerce. It's a different guy now, but back then it was Schumacher. Forgot his not Michael Schumacher, the F1 guy, but Schumacher. It was his surname. I was seated right next to him, and right next to me was my friend Tony Abad. So we were talking, we were chatting, all that stuff, and I really got to speak to the different joint chambers of commerce people, and Dr. Peter Köppinger. Sorry, that's the guy from Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. He was also there. So we all had this, we had these discussions, and they confirmed that a lot of the companies that are under their different chambers of commerce were always complaining about the Constitution. That is the first thing that they look at, and that's the reason why so many of them got turned off. That basically, it's like some of these companies that actually decided not to go to the Philippines are companies that are not prevented from coming to the Philippines. They are, if they had actually gone to phase 2. So basically, phase 1 is looking at the Constitution, and then phase 2 is looking at the legislation. Dito pa lang sa constitutional level, they said, "Oh, look, there's so many of these. There's this what's this? Article 12, Section 10. Oh, this is bullshit. Like this one is about the Congress must create laws that will limit the ownership to 40% by foreign." Like, huh? We're gonna have that? Oh, never mind. We're gonna go somewhere else. So the first step is looking at the Constitution. Second step is looking at the legislation, and then third step is looking at all the other stuff. A huge percentage of companies, after they look at the Constitution, they no longer bother to look at the other stuff because they saw the 60-40 clauses in the 1987 Constitution, and they saw that all the other countries in Southeast Asia don't have that. So, the problem with many Filipinos is that we think that we are the only act in town. That we think that the Philippines is the only country that people want to come to. That if they really want to come in, they will put up with our restrictions. That's what many Filipinos think. They forget that all these other companies, they actually, all these investors, they have options. So there's this parang screening process. The first round is looking at the Constitution, and that's the first round where we get eliminated. And then in the second round, then they start looking at the legislation, and we never make it to that round. So first round pa lang, tang na ta. First round pa lang, tanggal na tayo.
Who told you this again, Orion?
All these guys from the joint chambers of commerce, from the different the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and the American Chamber of Commerce, the European Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Schumacher, who was the guy who was handling the European Chamber of Commerce back in 2010, he was the one who told me that. He was the guy I was right next to me. He was on my left. Tony Abad was on my right. So, that's the thing. So it was in that particular event.
Giko
Goody.
Good evening, Ron and Orion. 2 years na yung 1987 Constitution ni Kurikong. Hanggang ngayon ay pinapahirapan ang sambayan ng Pilipino, kaya idiotic at utak talangkang Christian Monsod watching from the UK. This got me thinking when I read this message from
Giko Goody.
They had like enough time to sort of like test to find out or assess whether or not the economic provisions work for us. Diba? They had the idea that, okay, if we protect the Filipino businessmen, they have an expected result where they want Filipinos to really, Filipino businesses will grow. But what actually happened in the last 34 years since the 1987 Constitution is we have like a select few na tinatawag nating oligarchs nga, Orion, di ba? That
Yeah.
talagang yun ang mga nakinabang sa konstitusyon. So let's probably ask Christian Monsod, did they ever, did they ever at one point admit that maybe they made a mistake in having these restrictions? Because they seem to be talking in the hypothetical pa rin, Orion, eh, na these
Hypothetical lahat.
di ba, they're supposed to do this, and it's all like idealistic yung point of view na it's supposed to help the Filipinos, prioritize the Filipinos, but is it actually helping the economy? Is it helping
We
the
all
country?
know that it hasn't. We all know that it hasn't helped at all. And that's the sad part, because they're just basically preventing job creation from happening. Now, other countries, for example, Lee Kuan Yew, he said, when Lee Kuan Yew was asked, what do you think about, this whole idea of bringing in foreign investors, was this the right thing? And he said, look, we had no choice. Back then, Lee Kuan Yew said, if we were going to go with the prevailing wisdom of many third world countries back then, which was you have to protect your industries and prevent foreign investors from coming in, we would have starved. That's what Lee Kuan Yew said, because he said we did not have that many businessmen we did not have that many local businessmen in Singapore at the time. The few businessmen that we had were usually merchants, buy and sell. They owned malls. That's all. They did not have manufacturing facilities. They did not really go into manufacturing. They did not go into anything high tech. And high tech is what allows you to have a lot of jobs, good paying jobs that train people to move up the ladder. And he said, back then, we only had small businessmen, like mga taho vendor types, those fishball vendor, hawkers basically. That's all they had. And they had just a few buy and sell people, but they didn't have local industrialists. And he said, in order to industrialize, you need a lot of money. You need know-how and skills. And we couldn't find any locally. So we needed to go to foreign investors. We need to ask foreign investors to come in and create the jobs that the local investors were unable to create because there were so few of them and too many of our ordinary people who were unemployed. And the biggest problem for why they were going to be unemployed, why he was so afraid of this unemployment problem, was because in Singapore before, Singapore was kind of like Subic Bay and Clark. That's really what it was. Subic Bay and Clark. So they are military base. Singapore was a big British military base. They had their shipyards and military bases, and a lot of the people in Singapore were employed by the British. Now, in the 1960s, the British were already feeling the pinch because it was too expensive to maintain overseas military installations, because they were no longer the premier power of the world. That was America. That was the premier power of the world. So they needed to scale down. So Britain, the UK, was telling their colonies, okay, we're going to be withdrawing our military bases. So they told Lee Kuan Yew, you know what, in 2 years' time, we'll be getting out. It's too expensive. And he said, no, but I need your help because my people are going to lose their jobs. And then the British said, okay, you know what, we'll just extend it another 2 years, but you got to find some alternative income generation for these people who will lose their jobs when he pull out. That's why he said we need to go with foreign direct investors. We need to replace the jobs that will go away when the British leave. And that's why he said, okay, I'll bring in all these European, American, and Japanese companies to come in and set up companies and give jobs to my people. And that's what other countries learned from Singapore. Oh, Malaysia said, ganyan pala. Okay, we'll do the same. China did the same thing. Oh, we'll do that too. And then Thailand and Indonesia and now Vietnam. The Philippines is the only one that's super mayabang. Hambugiro jud kayo ang Pilipinas. We can do this by ourselves. We don't need the help of foreigners. And now what's happening? We don't need the help of foreigners. We have become a country that exports our people to work for very low wages And instead of, before, a lot of cab drivers in Singapore would say to me, "Hey, Singapore before, Singapore very poor before, but Philippines, your country, Philippines very rich. You are the richest country before in Southeast Asia. And before in 1950s, Hong Kong is sending the old people, the old women, these women, they go there to Philippines to work as maid. They were the nannies, they were the ama, Then now it's the other way around. In the other way around already. So now because Philippines so poor, now Filipino need to go to other countries and work as maid. Parang, so what? That's the thing that forced me to get into this whole constitutional reform thing. No one's paying me for this. It's my anger at how we have become such a loser country based on the fact that we used to be the richest, and now what? We are now reduced to being like that. Parang everybody remembers that all these cab drivers, the old ones, the old cab drivers, they remember when the Philippines was the country they looked up to. And now we're the country of the menial workers, and
this is no different from a person who's trying to lose weight. Really, if you think about it, just the mere mention of the activity of, or the just a mere mention of somebody trying to lose weight, or if you ask somebody to lose weight, when they think about it, they know there's so much work that needs to be done, so they get discouraged. And with the Constitution, here's the thing: people might be wondering, why are we focusing too much on this exercise where we discuss the Constitution every Friday, and you have like all these hearings happening in Congress and the Senate? Bakit ba kailangan baguhin ng Constitution? Because if you are for reforms, kung gusto mo talaga magbago yung buhay ng mga Pilipino, hindi lang isang bagay ang dapat ireporma. Kailangan talaga magsimula somewhere. And it's the same thing when you try to lose weight. You'll have to do jumping jacks and burpees in the beginning and do cardio before you can actually try to, strengthen your muscles or grow.
You have to put in the work. You have to put in the work.
You have to put in the work. You have to do the hard stuff. And the hard stuff happens to be with the basic things that we need to change, which is the Constitution, because it dictates what system is in place. And if we don't change the 1987 Constitution, which is obviously already after thousands of minutes and hours of discussing it, it sets the kumbaga, if we can't change that, then everything that President Duterte is doing all these years, opening us up for changes, will be for
useless lang.
For nothing.
It will be for nothing. Yeah.
And let me read some of the other messages here, Ryan. Sabi ni Beans, a few years ago I worked with European Airlines, and my boss is a Swiss. We were in an event with the European Chamber of Commerce with the respective ambassadors. One European guy said that the only way to have business here in the Philippines is to marry a Filipina. It may sound very innocuous or funny, but that's really true, right? Because you can't really own a business 100% if you are not naturalized. Or so the way to do that is to marry a Filipina so that you can own a business 100%, even if it has to be through your wife. How about Ryan? Is that the logic?
That's the only way they're able to do it. That's the only way they're able to do it. I mean, that's also how Angkas, when it was hit by that public utilities bullshit of the Constitution, Angkas was reclassified, suddenly like recategorized as a public utility, and that, because it's a public utility, according to the 1987 Constitution, it must be at least 60% owned by Filipino. So Angeline Tam, who was the real founder of the company, as tech, is really a tech company. It's a tech company, right? A tech startup. And then it was reclassified suddenly by some stupid idiots as a public utility. She just basically said, okay, you know what? Well, I happen to be married to a Filipino, so okay, okay, Han, this is now under your name. So it got under her husband, George Royeca's name. But luckily for her, she had that situation. But other people, they don't. So
Makes me
it's
makes me wonder about Uber though, because obviously, Uber was here at one point, uh, and Grab had like really good competition when Uber was
yeah.
still.
I
They,
don't know how they were able to do it, but I don't know if they
they
partnered with
partnered.
some group locally. I don't know. That's usually how they do it. They would normally have to do it like that. Gojek, for example, they couldn't come in because they were being blocked by the 60/40 again. So
But there are industries though that can operate 100% foreign owned, right? Like manufacturing.
yes, yes. So manufacturing is allowed to come in, and you can have 100% or just a majority. However, the problem is that manufacturing operations today in this time, in this particular point in time, it's no longer done by a single company. Okay, when like in the past, for example, like when long ago, long ago, when Timex, the watch company, came to Cebu, it came in as one company, Timex. And Timex is a manufacturing company because they manufacture watches.
Hmm.
So they are fine. Okay, fine. You're able to come in because you're manufacturing. But that was long ago. I think it was the 70s or something. It was long ago, or not 80s, when they came in. But today, when you have an operations for manufacturing coming into a country, you're talking about something like 5, 6 to 10 or 15 companies coming at the same time. So when Apple, for example, well, let's say Apple goes to China, when it went to China, it was not only Apple that went to China, it was like 10 companies.
Hmm.
Apple went there owning the design of the products and the specifications, the copyrights and all these things, and the general project management of overall project management. But who was the actual manufacturing contractor? It's Foxconn, right?
Hmm.
So you have
Hmm.
you had Apple, you have Foxconn, and then nowadays most companies, they don't have their own in-house accounting. They use some
Mhm.
third-party company to do accounting. So they have another company that does accounting, another company that handles the HR processing, and another company that does the travel stuff. Another company that so they have all this outsourcing that they do. So when companies nowadays do manufacturing in other countries, it's you're not talking to one company. There's one company that's fronting. That's the principal. That's Apple, for example. But right behind Apple are all these other companies that are part of their entourage.
Mhm.
And in that entourage are companies that belong to different sectors.
Mm.
So those sectors, some of those sectors are not allowed by the foreign investment negative list because they'll say, "Oh, you are a company that engages in this. Oh, sorry, but you are not allowed to come in because your sector is part of the negative list. You are not allowed to come in. You will need to ask your for the cleaning facilities of your company. You will need to hire this local company instead. You cannot bring your subcontractor from the US to come here."
Mm.
So you know, just like in a country club, okay, in a country club, right? Sometimes you're going to be a family, and then sometimes it's like there's six of you, and then there's one person who is said to be not allowed to come in. Like, some country clubs, they have this dress code, right? No shorts, no slippers, whatever. So everyone is dressed nicely, and there's one person, maybe an uncle or a lolo, who is probably wearing shorts and slippers, and he's coming in, and then the whole family comes in, and then the guard says, "Ay, sir, pasensya na sir, pero bawal dito yung pumasok yung naka-shorts at saka naka-tsinelas, sir."
Mm.
And what does the whole family say? Okay, so hindi pala pwede dahil okay, lipat na lang kami sa ibang country club.
Mm. Mm.
Lipat na lang kami, the whole family will not go inside
Mm.
because one person was not allowed to come inside.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I think this clearly shows why we don't have that many manufacturing operations in the Philippines, because when you have manufacturing operations in the Philippines now, I mean in all around the world, it's no longer just one company. It's a lot of companies coming together, and only one company that's really a manufacturing company, and the others are doing a HR, accounting, tax of whatever, tax consulting, blah 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 blah, janitorial services, blah 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 blah, and things like that. For example, janitorial services. That's something that will most likely be, oh, it needs to be done by a majority owned Filipino company, you know. And when that company, that let's say let's say it's a laboratory type setting, maybe let's just say it's a semiconductor company, right? And the janitorial services needs to adhere to specialized, highly scientific ways of cleaning stuff. A local company may not have that knowledge or that technology to do it. Maybe a company from the US does, right? So they are already, that company is already ISO certified with all the certifications of, let's say Apple says this is what we need. That company knows how to do it. And then they're told by DTI, I'm sorry, but that company is not allowed to come in because it's a let's say, janitorial services company, and that's not allowed under the FINL. Then Apple will say, "What? You know what? We'll just go to Vietnam. We'll forget it. Sorry, you don't want. We're an entourage, and if you don't want at least one person, one group, or one company within our entourage to come in, then we're not coming in as a whole group." And that's what happens, guys. That's what happens.
Let's read the messages here, Ryan. Kasi dami ng mga nagpapadala ng mga messages nila about the topic. Si Josh Fernandez says, same thoughts and feelings po, Sir Ron and Sir Orion. Sabik na sabik akong makitang sagana ang Pinas. Pagpatuloy nyo lang po ang usapin ng CONREF sa Istoryang Futbolero para mas lalo pang maabot ang mga taong wala pang nalalaman tungkol sa reformang ito at mamulat na ito ay para sa bayan. Correct? And fix the system, watching from California.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much for that, Josh. Si Vanessa Argeb or Ragib. Good evening, gentlemen. First time to see you live. Essential discussion, padayon lang. Mr. Orion, do you live around Sengkang West area?
Yes, I do. Well, I where did you see? Tell me, because I mean, yes, I live in the Fernvale area. So I was just walking earlier with my family. So I don't know if you saw me, but yeah, I was wearing a mask. Or maybe did you see me in Jalan Kayu where we had dinner earlier? I don't know, but yeah, but yeah, that was me that you probably saw. I wasn't wearing this shirt though, but yeah, if that was just today, that was me. Yeah. You had a walk.
Easily recognizable ka pala, Orion, no? In the middle of a crowd, people will recognize you pala.
It used to happen. I'll just talk about this. Yeah, it used to happen. There was a time when I was doing like a live or something, and like I was walking through Orchard Road, and then suddenly, Sir Orion. So daghang kay Pilipino man abot na ko, Sir Orion, I watch your live. So that was before the pandemic, right? So yeah, so it has happened.
Coco Lear Dogs 2 says, correct, gyud si Orion, daghan kaayo mayabang sa Pinas, lalo na yung UP daming rocket scientist ngayon. Wala ang company gumagawa ng screwdriver. Dati ang AGNP gumagawa ng mga motor. Bulok. That's from Coco. Tapos si said Bauzon, it seems that social justice in our constitution is not working until now. That's a really good point, no? I think yun lang pa lang. I mean, logically, if you're a rational person, the first thing you will ask yourself, if you came up with a system that and you have a desired outcome, and it's not meeting the desired outcome, you should probably the prudent thing to do, Orion, is to reassess. Actually, this guy, Orion, I wanted to share with you the one of the proponents. He happens to be one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution, and he also did his presentation at the Senate hearing of Kiko Pangilinan. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you know this guy. Let me show you just a short.
Braid, I don't know, Braid.
Si Ascuna, si Justice Ascuna.
Okay.
chairman, as a member of the Constitutional Commission that drafted the present Constitution, I believe that we intended the economic provisions to last not more than 5 years.
There you go.
The 5-year period, Mr. Chairman, is contained in another provision which says that the Constitution cannot be amended, cannot be revised by referendum, by plebiscite, by initiative within the first 5 years. We wanted the Constitution to be untouched, really, for 5 years, including the economic provisions, to see if it works. After that, since economic provisions should be flexible, I think we should address the need to adjust them to changing times.
Oh, there you go.
Yun naman pala. Yeah, and then I remember that this idiot Monsod said, "I disagree with you. We did not mean it to be just for 5 years. It was meant to be for a long time." I remember seeing that idiot say that. But I recall. I saw that part where Ascuna was saying that he thinks it was supposed to be for just 5 years, and that he expected that after those 5 years it would have been amended. In fact, it was in 1992, just a few years after the 1987 Constitution, in 1992, when Lee Kuan Yew in November of 1992 came and visited the Philippines, and he said basically that the Constitution of the Philippines the system of the Philippines is so anti-foreign direct investor, and that needs to be changed. And that he said he was already seeing that President Ramos at that time was already doing liberalization measures. And then he said that this is a good sign, but it needs to be continued, and the Constitution itself needs to be fixed. So, and not only the economic restrictions, he also said that one of the problems of the Philippines is that you have an American-style presidential system, which is one of the hardest to use in the world. So, as early as that time, Lee Kuan Yew was already talking about how bad the 1987 Constitution was. But during that time, the Filipinos were so fucking mayabang, saying, "No, we are the most democratic country. You have no right to tell us that. You are a dictator. You don't have any right to tell us that we are not doing a good job. We have the best constitution in the world." And then, Pinoys were so fucking ignorant and arrogant at that time. We are the most democratic country in Asia, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, fuck that shit. What happened? We became one of the most dysfunctional in the world. Damn it.
This reminds me of something, Mike. Just recently, I was watching a video of, Mayor Pete Buttigieg. He's like a former Marine. He's
No,
actually
I don't know him.
he's a gay former military serviceman who became mayor of a city in the United States, and he even ran for to be nominated as president for the Democratic Party. And he said in one of his interviews, very eloquent guy.
Buttigieg. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
He said something like, the electoral college doesn't make any sense. We should, because people are supposed to be the ones voting for president, and a vote should be counted as a vote. So in other words, like this guy, he himself is saying that the American system, the electoral system of the United States, is flawed.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I sent you on the private chat. I sent you a video that you can show to the public about Lee Kuan Yew talking. So just show them this clip starting at 6:40, and
6:40.
yeah. So you go there, show this to our audience, and then he's going to be talking about why it's so important, to have foreign investors creating jobs and all that stuff.
He came to
Because
the conclusion.
Okay, let me.
share it.
Yeah, hang on. Lee Kuan Yew. Mm-hmm. All right.
that we should create a first world oasis in a third world region. The first thing is the economy. Without that, you have no jobs, no revenue, no nothing. So we started manufacturing, and we invited or attracted multinationals to invest in Singapore, build their factories here, made goods, and exported it abroad. Then we had jobs. Then we had revenue. And with that revenue, we were able to build homes, build schools, educate them, build hospitals, and so we progressed. But without an economy, nothing works.
Okay, you can stop that now.
In the late 60s and 1970s, when Singapore was still struggling.
All right, there.
Yeah. So that's the part where Lee Kuan Yew was basically talking about why he needed to bring in foreign direct investors. By the way, you have that echo is happening again.
Baozon says, if Monsod said that our constitution is promoting social justice, then why is he ignoring local investors when they are creating few jobs to Pinoy job seekers? About the job description consists of such higher standards in every job position. The reason is that many unemployed Pinoys are struggling to find a basic decent job. They feel discriminated to see these specific job description listed of these job positions offered by the local investors.
Yeah, so it's very clear. I mean, and he makes a lot of sense, because this is what happens in the Philippines. Because for every position, for every available job opening, there's probably like 1,000 people who want to get that job, right? So in order to screen out having too many people applying and lining up for that job, they're going to say, we need to have only we need to interview only 5 to 10 people at most for this one job. Because if they don't do these screening techniques, they'll have thousands of applicants just for a janitor job or from some very, very basic job to do. Why? Because there's just too many job seekers and too few jobs. So what do they do to reduce the number of jobs of applicants? They make the standards so high. They're going to say must be a college graduate, even though it's if it's just for a very simple janitor job. They're going to make it like you need to be a college graduate. Must speak good English.
I don't know if this is fake, but somebody showed there's like an advert on hiring a cashier for this shop called Surplus, which is owned by the SM group of companies. Do you know the store Surplus?
Yeah, I know Surplus. Yeah.
So they're looking for cashiers, and you can really see the first thing that you will see there is college graduate.
Yeah.
To apply for a cashier. And so I saw the comment section. There's this person saying, "Wow, college graduate, taas naman ng ano nito, ng qualification. Yung ano nga cashier sa Jollibee, hindi pa nga nakatapos ng high school, naging cashier sa Jollibee." That was diba? So that's true. So that's the case here in our country. Sometimes it's the qualifications that they're looking for are so unreasonable. And
but they have no choice. Also, they have no choice, because if they don't put those really high standards, they're going magdadagsaan ang mga tao. They'll be having like thousands of applicants coming for that one job. So
correct.
How else are they going to lessen the number of applicants? So they try to make it very hard. They're gonna say, you need to at least have this much years of experience first before you can come in. And then they're going to say you need to be a college graduate. You need to be good looking, or that you must speak good English. Blah blah blah. They're going to say that.
At least 5'2".
Yeah. They're even going to talk about height.
And
so that's the problem.
Roldan Lalican says, "What's bad about the Senate hearing? You hear these politicians with their eloquence and oratorical deliveries, pero they've been bullshitting us for 20 years. We actually gave the freaking Constitution 10-year trial. It should be amended." I think I know who you're talking about. Is this guy from Iloilo? And he sleeps a lot during Senate hearings. He's not part of. Because Drilon, I think mentioned something. He does this lawyer thing when he sets you up with a question, and then it's almost like rhetorical in nature when he asks these questions because he has an answer for it. I think the question he posed during the Senate hearing of Senator Pangilinan, he asked, "Do you think it's possible to just craft laws? Like, for example, meron na kasi ako, I already created a bill, so 3 bills actually, to help us attract more foreign investment. We don't need." Parang his point is, no need to amend the Constitution because we can draft laws to make it easier for foreign investors to come in.
And this is the point I was saying. That's not enough. That's not enough, because when companies are looking at going from from the States or from Europe to another country, they're not looking at only one country. They're not only looking to come to the Philippines. They're looking at 3, 4, 5 different countries, and they do a process of elimination. And in that process of elimination, they look first at the Constitution. That's the first thing they look at. And when they look at the Constitution and they see one country sticking out as the one and only country that has restrictions against foreign investors inside the Constitution, that country gets taken out. They don't care about, oh, you have this law to allow more investors in that sector. They don't care because they're not going to look. Like, basically, they start off looking at the Constitution, and then next part is when after they've eliminated 1 or 2 or 3 countries from that list, that's the only time they start looking at the laws. The Philippines gets eliminated before they can already start looking at the laws. That's the point. So it's useless. Stupid pig Drilon is saying this again. I mean, what a freaking idiot. And by the way,
yeah.
I saw how that idiot was trying to obfuscate matters on how things are supposed to be amended. He was saying, but it did not say in the text that it should be. Do we need to have a joint session? And that dude, it was already very clear. And this is the part where I agree with Monsod and Mendoza, even though I don't really like those guys. But my point is, I agree with them in saying that, look, they made a mistake because they were so rushed and so in a hurry to set this up, because it was originally meant to be unicameral, and at the last minute it became bicameral, and they forgot to change that part about whether it's jointly, separately, do you have a joint session and all that. They didn't get to put that there. Now, Mendoza and Monsod did say properly that the original 1935 Constitution is what should be the basis of how we are going to do a constituent assembly.
Mm-hmm.
Trilon, the idiot, was basically saying, but it is not in the law. And then Grace Poe said properly, correctly, that, well, that even if that's the case, sir, at least, but it still doesn't say in the text that you are not allowed to do it jointly. So, I mean, this pig was trying to push his opinion over the fact that in the absence of restrictive text, follow the convention. So basically, the convention laid out in the original 1935 Constitution is that when you're going to do a constituent assembly, both houses of Congress must meet jointly, but then vote separately. That's how it's supposed to be done. Now Drilon was trying to confuse people. He was trying to prolong the whole thing so that we will never get a consensus on how it works, and that it will always get dragged on and it's never going to happen. That's what he wanted to do.
Well, there's also an answer to what you said about the ability of Congress to to draft laws that will help foreign investment to come in. First of all, it's limited to. Um, l- it's still limited to what the constitution tells you, right? So, what Dominic says here in our message board, he says, sabi nga ni Joey Salceda, hanggang saan lang magagawa nila kung walang babaguhin sa konstitusyon. Isa pa yan si Drilon. So yes, you can probably, craft very creative ways of enticing foreign investors to come in by drafting laws, or but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's still going to be dependent on what the basic guidelines the Constitution sets for these laws that you have, proposed.
Just like I said, the very first thing that companies, legal departments look at when they decide where they're going to go as an investor is they look at the Constitution first. And when they decide, when they try to first explore, when they explore, they're not exploring only with one country. It's hindi to ligawan na naniligaw ka isang babae lang. Collect and select the way they do what they do is naniligaw sila explore sila sa maraming bansa. So they're going to look at Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, and then they do their comparison. They'll first look at the Constitution. Doon tayo nasisira. Doon tayo natatanggal. Sa first stage na yan. It's like a restaurant that basically says that may malaking nakapaskil saying, this restaurant is exclusive only to relatives and close friends of the owner of the restaurant. Huh? And then, lalagyan mo ng, unless you are accompanied by a relative of so parang you can come in if you are a guest of a relative or a close friend of the owner. Now, if you naisip ng owner, so konti pa rin yung sales natin kahit inaano natin na kinakailangan there is a kamag-anak coming along. So ano na lang, i-allow na rin natin yung iilan dyan. So we'll draw up a list of sino yung mga pwede. So you now put that, nandyan pa rin yung sign na no one is allowed to come into this restaurant unless accompanied by a relative or a close friend, unless otherwise permitted by the owner. Okay? So may ganyan ka, unless otherwise permitted by the owner. So meaning to say, they're going to say, there is a list that says whether you can come in or not. But if you are an ordinary passersby, yung passerby ka lang, walking through the restaurant, when you see that big sign that says you're not allowed to come in, will you take a second look and ask the waiter, pwede ba akong pumasok? Am I allowed to come in? You won't anymore. Because when you see that sign, it says that you're not really allowed. Actually, hindi ka na nga titingin dun sa unless otherwise invited by the owner. Parang they don't care anymore. Pag nakita nila na hindi ka pala pwede, wag na lang. And that's the situation of the Constitution of the Philippines. The Constitution basically gives this very, very bad impression to outside investors coming to the Philippines na ayaw namin sa inyo. So, dun pa lang sa first impressions, tanggal na. Parang yan sa date eh. Parang yan sa date. Parang yan kung mag-date ka ng babae, hindi ka magpapakita ng mga bad habits mo sa harap. Hindi ka hahatsing-hatsing, hindi ka magpapass wind sa harapan niya. Di ba? Yung mga ganun, hindi, you don't give bad impressions on the first date. That's the situation. Yun ang nangyayari sa atin dahil sa constitution natin. Doon pa lang natatanggal tayo.
Ito na lang, Orion. This is more logical analysis of what happens in the Philippines, no? So 60-40, 60% owned by Filipinos, 40% fed foreign. So meron naman talaga tayong mga foreign-owned companies who are operating here in the Philippines. But you have to ask yourself, sino ba ang mga Filipino partners sila? And
marami dyan lawyers.
But I'm sure guaranteed, Orion, let's just say hindi dummy yung Filipino partner nila.
The oligarch.
Oligarch.
Oligarch
Sigurado,
yun.
yeah.
Oligarch. Oh,
that's
sigurado
why
yan.
Yung growth in terms of wealth, exponential talaga for the top 5%, Ryan? Can I say 5% or 2% lang of the entire
Mga
population?
2% nga lang eh. 2% lang yata eh.
So 2% of
2%
the
lang.
10 million Filipinos in the Philippines are reaping the benefits from this particular provision, economic provision of the Constitution. The 60-40 rule is not really helping the Filipinos per se, but just a few.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
they're helping just a small percentage, the top 2% of our population in growing their business, because they're the only ones who can actually handle other big foreign companies as partners. Sila lang yung may credibility to actually present themselves to a foreign entity and say, we can partner with you. We're big here in the Philippines. We can guarantee you certain, benefits or in this partnership because we hold logistics, everything. We have, like, for example, if you're Ayala, we have lots of land that you can use.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
we are in real estate, that part of our business. So, ano lang eh, common sense lang eh.
I
No.
can you check this out, Ron, yung kay Gray Casimir Mendez. Yung I work in McDonald's in Singapore. They trained me
Yeah,
for
yeah,
they
I was about to
Yeah.
read that actually,
Yeah.
because everything that we're discussing here, it doesn't require a PhD. It's just pure common sense, really. If you think about it, who benefits from this 60-40 rule? The intention of the framers is that so that Filipinos will benefit from it. But the problem is, it's just 2% of the of Filipinos who are benefiting from it. It's the top 2%. It's the so-called oligarchs ang nakikinabang sa provision na to. Kaya siguro may nahihirapan din tayo na baguhin yung provision na yan, natanggalin yung economic provisions, because who stands to lose more? The ones who control or control the playing field, which are the oligarchs. So kaya you really have to think about it. Why are these people protecting it? Because I think it's quite obvious to many that this is not helping the regular Juan or the
Yeah,
regular,
not at all. Sina
diba?
Monsod lang ang nakikinabang. Si Monsod at yung mga Lopez na mga ina-askis niya.
Sabi ni Gray Mendez, I work in McDonald's in Singapore. They trained me for a day and I got the job, continue my studies after, and serve national service. They're now working in an IT company. Singapore is using basic common sense. Like I said, common sense.
Common sense lang, yeah.
Dito to give jobs sa mga tao. Even in the midst of a pandemic, Singapore managed to get $17.2 billion in investments. Dollars in the billions kahit na may pandemic. So you have to think, what are they doing right that we are not doing? Diba? I think yun ang kulang sa atin, Urayon eh. Especially when you listen to the
hearings.
the Senate hearings, the congressional hearings. Problema, karamihan sa ating mga resource people or the ones who are invited and also some of our lawmakers, they're not using common sense at all. Si Lee Kuan Yew, yung video na pinakita mo kanina, hindi naman
Common
ganun.
sense yun eh.
Hindi naman
Walang rocket science doon. Sabi niya, you have to fix the economy first. No?
Yes.
So that's why we first brought in foreign investors and then they brought in jobs. And then when people have jobs, they have money for food. And when we have money, we now have money for yun nga, yung mga roads and schools and etc. We are able to educate people. Ganon, simple lang. Very but if you don't have an economy, then you have nothing. You don't have yung mga so-called social social justice ni stupid bobong tarantadong Monsod. Putang ina. Paano mo makukuha yung wala namang pera? Wala namang pumapasok na pera masyado. Konti lang naman ng mga asendero natin, konti lang naman ng mga mayayaman sa Pilipinas. Kailangan talaga natin ng foreign direct investors. Ang dami-dami ng it's 100 million Filipinos now and you still have a very small number of businessmen. I mean, you'll never be able to catch up. So just bring the foreign investors in, create as many jobs. Then when people have more jobs, and gaganda ang buhay ng mga tao.
Yeah, goes hand in hand, diba? When you create more jobs, people can afford stuff, to buy stuff, and then then you have more revenue, you have more taxes for the government to work with, and you have more money to spend on education. Because first of all, ano sabi nila, Orion? Where did this saying come from? I just caught the last part of it. Ignorance. If you wanna control the population, make them ignorant. Um, make sure they make
Keep
sure
them
to
ignorant. Yeah.
keep them make sure to keep them ignorant if you want to control a population. And that's exactly what's happening with us, because majority of our population are uneducated or undereducated. um, and and the thing is, they like the conditions to be the same, because for these conditions, because make it more, um, ano beneficial for the ones who control the economy. And if we don't do anything about it, then how can we reform anything at all during this administration? Sabi ni Orion, before we end the program, no, because we hit the second hour mark,
Yeah.
and baka hinahanap ka na ng ni Commander.
Oo nga
Um,
eh.
Sabi ni from Japan, makasarili talaga mga Filipino vloggers na nasa Pilipinas. Why? I've watched many kinds of live videos, but compared to this kind of topic, I believe na ito dapat ang isa sa i-push nila. This FDI, this is the one that will help the entire nation. Thank you. Our viewer from Japan. Can you read Japanese, Ryan? What does this say?
No, unfortunately, I can't read katakana.
Um, Gray Mendez, nice picture of Agong in your background, Sir Orion. Singapore misses him so much.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Lee Kuan Yew. Akong is.
Agong. All right. Jeremy Tiamsik, bottom line, elites want the common one na nakatali sa lieg. And Brenton Bernal, sir, ano masasabi niyo sa prediction ng mga
Okay, that's Maria Teresa Lopez pala yung babaeng yung nasa Japan. Yung Japanese Maria Teresa Lopez.
Maria Teresa Lopez, cool. Good to know.
That's in katakana. Maria Teresa Lopez. So,
Sabi ni
Maria
Brenton
Teresa
Bernal,
Lopez.
sir, ano masasabi niyo sa prediction ng mga economists na ASEAN will become the next Europe in the next 30 to 40 years?
Ano lang, unfortunately, ang Pilipinas, tama si Dominic Sulpico, yan, Maria Teresa Lopez, yun yung katakana na yun. Anyway, yeah, the Southeast Asia, ASEAN can become it, and then the Philippines will be, unfortunately, the odd man out, unless we change the constitution.
But
That's
can't
gonna
happen. The ASEAN can be a sort of like a European Union model in its full glory if the Philippines don't remove the restrictions, because how can you deal with
they're gonna kick us out, okay. Here's the thing, guys. We are in danger of getting kicked out of ASEAN if we continue to still have those stupid, idiotic anti-foreign direct investment restrictions. So what's going to happen is the foreign direct investors, these restrictions will make us unable to participate in many of the economic treaties that are implicit in ASEAN. So there's now this ASEAN integration, ASEAN economic integration that's being talked about, and other countries are now moving towards that. And the Philippines is way behind, like 20 years behind that, because we are non-compliant on almost all counts. We don't allow foreigners to come into our country to work as professionals. We have these kind of weird laws that are enshrined in the Constitution.
Yeah.
And it's enshrined in the Constitution that you're not allowed to work here if you're a foreigner, blah, 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 these certain professions, and then all these investment stuff. Because in ASEAN, they're saying you have to lower those restrictions and allow for companies to go to set themselves up in different parts of ASEAN. Now, how are you going to do that if our constitution continues to be non-compliant?
Right.
We'll end up getting kicked out.
Or incompatible.
We'll get kicked out. We'll get kicked out. That's what's going to happen. Mangyayari yan. Matatanggal tayo.
Our last few messages here. Well, sa Guevara, nung nag-work ako noon sa isang design firm sa Sheshen,
Shenzhen, yeah.
Shenzhen.
Shenzhen, yeah.
Minsan nag-joke yung boss kong Brit, maswerte daw ako kasi nakatira ako sa flat na may maid's room. Samantalang sa Hong Kong, yung mga Pinoy ang nakatira sa maid's room, sabay tawa. Joke pero nakakabastos. Magaling ang Pinoy pero bakit kailangan pa mag-work sa ibang bansa? Dapat talaga matanggal na yung 60-40 restrictions na yun.
Exactly, yan, Welbs. Yan ang isa sa mga main issues na, kumbaga, bakit ako naging proponent ng pagtatanggal ng mga restrictions na yan? It's because of working abroad. It's because of coming to Singapore. So kaya yung mga iba dyan, kunyari, yung isang lawyer dyan na kontra ng kontra sa amin, sa correct, na hindi nakakaintindi ng economics, na nagsasabing bayaran daw ako, pero siya pala yung bayaran ng SMC at ni RSA, yung pala, hindi niya alam na kapag ikaw ay namulat sa katotohanan dahil nasa iba kang bansa at nakikita mo, ito pala ang patakaran sa bansang tulad ng Singapore, yung pala yung magiging rason kung bakit mo gustong baguhin ang Pilipinas. That's the situation with me. For me, yung isa sa mga talagang nagmo-motivate sa akin na ayusin ang Pilipinas yung sobra na akong yung galit na ako, sobra na akong naiinis dahil yung mga cab driver pag nalaman na Pilipino ako, yan na naman yung kwento. You're from Philippines. Before Singapore very very poor. Then Philippines the richest country, and now what happened already? Why Philippines so poor already? Terribly poor one. Like now it's so poor that people in Philippines now eating rubbish. They go to rubbish bin and they eat from the trash. Why like that? Parang, maiinis ka parang, pero hindi ka naiinis sa cab driver. Kasi totoo yung sinasabi niya at ikaw nahihiya ka sa sarili mo at naiinis ka sa mga oligarch na nagsulat ng 1987 Constitution na yan. Maiinis ka kapag nasa iba kang bansa at nakikita mong napag-iwanan na talaga tayo. Yun talaga yun.
Last few months, Ryan, sabi ni Gray Mendez, napili pala ng USA at China na dito mag-meet for Davos, meaning punta ata dito si President Biden and Jinping for March meetup. Is this true?
Sa Singapore? You mean Singapore? Yeah, Gray Casimir. Because Gray is here in Singapore. Based here in Singapore. So Gray Casimir Mendez. It's Singapore. Singapore basically is very much like a Switzerland. So it's a very like neutral, and it's very open. So people can easily come here. No need for visa to come to Singapore. So, and the security is very good. There's no low crime, almost zero crime rate. So, parang it's seen as the best place to have international summits dito sa Singapore.
Right.
So, parang kung hindi pwede sa Davos kasi ang Europe nagkakaproblema yung kanilang COVID, doon na lang tayo sa Singapore. Kasi at least sa Singapore, mababa ang numbers ng COVID nila. Maayos sila na bansa, low crime, almost zero crime rate, blah, blah, blah. Doon na lang tayo sa Singapore. That's why they want to do the Davos here in Singapore and not anywhere else.
I just want to, before we end our episode of Istoryang Futbolero, Ryan, let's just acknowledge the viewers who stayed with us until midnight tonight, enjoying their Friday night with us. Please don't spend all your sweldo at one place, kasi you still have like 15 days before the next payday weekend kasi dito sa Pilipinas. Kaya medyo hinay-hinay lang. Although
I'm wondering if you would like to show this as a parting shot before we end the show, but there's this thing I wanted to show you, this video that maybe everybody needs to see, and it's the late Carlos Celdran, and maybe a lot of people who are diehard Duterte supporters will say, we don't like him, but he's speaking a lot of sense here in this old video. This video is from 2015, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
You want to show the entire video?
Yeah, show the entire video. It's only 2 minutes.
Okay. Hang on. Yeah, I know this guy. We met before in radio. Si Carlos Celdran. Wait, hang on.
A lot of the reasons why
Can you hear this?
squatters or informal settlements
Yep.
happen in the Philippines has a lot to do with migration. there simply were not enough jobs in the provinces for people, whether that be during Spanish colonial period or in current times. Okay, one of the reasons why we cannot solve these problems is because of the modern laws of the Philippines. Back in 1986, after we kicked out Ferdinand Marcos and Imelda from Malacanang Palace, Corazon Aquino rewrote the Constitution. And it was written badly and in a hurry, okay? So one of the provisions that are inside there is that now, in order to be nationalistic, Filipino corporations can only happen if 60% of the company is owned by Filipino, and a foreigner can only own 40%. We have the most unfriendly and hostile environment when it comes to foreign direct investment. So the Filipino skilled population ends up going abroad. And that is why there are more Filipinos working abroad and there are only the unskilled laborers left behind. So what have we created now? A polarized city where you have the richest of the rich living on one side within gated communities, the middle class ending up having to go abroad, and then you have the lower middle classes and all the poor people just literally filling in the spaces in between. So actually, when you're looking at poor people here, you're looking at poor people here that have been living here at least 3 or 4 generations deep. The reason why we're not feeling this, the 7% growth on this level is the 1987 Constitution. It is not an inclusive economy. That growth is only happening within 5% or less of the Philippine population. The top 1%, the Forbes Park, the oligarchs are feeling the money. So what happens? You have a great majority of the population that just slips through the cracks, while only 1% can feel the 7% growth.
There you go. So he
Yeah.
actually said it, right? I mean, yeah. So Carlos Ladran, when God bless his soul, he actually came out a lot on radio and on TV talking about this. I mean, he actually came out on Mo Twister's show. He actually talked about the 60-40. He also talked about the presidential system being lousy, the pork barrel being a direct result of the presidential system, and then he said that we need to have a parliamentary system and we need to get rid of the 60-40 and we need to have federalism. He was talking all about this in many shows, many appearances that he had. So I mean, I don't care so much about his which presidential candidate he went for or which one he was against. I mean, yes, we disagreed there very much because I was pro Duterte. I am pro Duterte and he was not. But before that, he was very much talking all about why the 1987 Constitution sucks. And before he actually died, he was about to actually come back to talking about this. He was going to, and I don't know why. I'm just saddened by his passing because he wanted to start getting back to this.
All right. Orion, before we finally say goodbye, thank you so much to Ronald, Sed, Dominic, Gray, Faye, Evelyn, Jeremy. Thank you so much for watching, Chico. Si Maravik Solis, Mark Borromeo, who says UAE is another good example of a result of restrictive FBI rules. They have 49.51 plus fees to pay for the local partner. Okay. Gray Mendez, si Dominic, thank you for watching. Si Daniel, Faye, and to the members of Correct Movement for joining the discussions tonight. Justin, salamat rin. And si Coco Lear Dogs. Earlier, Vanessa, Vanessa, and our friends also are on the other group listening to Istoryang Futbolero. So, Orion, do you have any final words that you want to, final shout outs?
Yeah, just keep on spreading information about why we need to get rid of those anti-foreign direct investment restrictions. And please spread the word on why we need more foreign direct investors. I mean, we have to keep on repeating this to so many people. There are so many hard-headed people there who are going against common sense. I mean, and a lot of them, sadly, a lot of them are lawyers. I'm not saying all are, but there are good lawyers there. My friend Tony Abad is a lawyer. My friend Dindo Donato is a lawyer. I have a lot of other friends. Even Duterte, of course, is a lawyer, and he's pushing for these reforms. But yeah, it's just sad that a lot of the people who are going against these reforms, like Christian Monsod, Baboy Drilon, Kiko Pangilinan, and so many other lawyers, are going against constitutional reform because they don't really understand the need for systemic change. That's really sad.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Just spread the word. Spread the word. Constitutional reform is important. Go to correctphilippines.org. Learn from there. We have a lot of resources there. Thank you.
It's, the fight is not over. Obviously, we still have a year and a half to go. We're hoping by 2022 there'll be a referendum as part of the elections, because that's the only way we will know if we are very successful with this campaign. If that happens, and the end game is for Congress and the Senate to agree, specifically 3/4 votes for both the Senate and Congress to approve charter change or the amendments, and then that will go through a referendum in 2022. Right, Ryan? That's the way.
Yes,
That's how it's gonna be if things work out for us. So thank you so much for supporting the advocacy. Every Fridays is constipation with Orion.
Yeah, it's talk about let's correct the Constitution.
Yeah.
Because the 1987 Constitution is a major source of constipation. We're not able to get rid of all that shit. Really. All those lousy politicians, we're not able to get rid of them. But we could easily do that if we had a parliamentary system. It's the way it works.
That's the way it works. Don't forget to, don't forget the basic health standards that are being set by the DOH. It's not over. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. You still have to wear your mask, keep physical distance to 1 meter, always wash your hands, and don't forget to stop to make sure that you don't spread fake news. Right, Orion?
Right.
Huwag tayo makinig sa mga gaya ni Monsod. Tsaka ni ano.
Baboy Drilon at saka ni Kiko Pangilinan.
All right, peace out, guys. Have a good night. Enjoy your weekend. And like I said earlier, don't spend everything in one place. Save some for later, all right? Have a good one. Bye. See ya.
Bye.